met this wonderful older man.
6 years older.
You said it was love at first sight.
On his part.
Yeah. My name is Joe Stabler.
My name is Ronnie Stabler, and this is my life.
my life. My full name is Joseph Stabler, no middle initial, and I was born October 30th, 1926 in the Bronx, New York. I can trace my family as far back as my grandfather, who I learned about from a cousin. My grandfather was a miller, and he used to buy wheat from the farmers, and he'd grind it up and then have it delivered to the bakers early in the morning so they could do the bread. My father's full name was Shmuel Stopsky, and then when he came to the United States, he changed it to Stabler, Samuel Stabler, and he was born in the Ukraine, in Russia. He liked to sing, the broad features, Slavic features, darker skin complexion. He had a good personality, and whenever we would go out in the car driving, he'd sing, and we enjoyed that. My mother's full name was Yvette Lieberman. She was born in Poland up near the Russian border, and sometimes it was Russia and sometimes it was Poland because it depended which way the war was going. She had a nice personality. She was sort of a health nut when we were living here, and I remember things. So she would make some lamb chops and then get some paper towel and squeeze all the grease out of it, and she would cook her vegetables in a pressure cooker, and that was her thing. She was always a homemaker, and my father earned a living as a tailor in a women's manufacturing clothing place. And he picked up my mom in a movie house. She was 2 rows in front, and then they were married. When I was a child, I remember, living all over Los Angeles, Boyle Heights, Temple, West Adams, 7th Avenue in Washington, and then up on Poinsettia Place. In 1938, we were living on West Boulevard, just south of Adams, and in a court. And 38, there was a pretty heavy earthquake. And what I remember is we had to sleep between the buildings for a couple of nights, because we thought something else might occur. And that's one of my earliest memories. As a kid, I liked to play tennis and swim, which I tried to do most of my life. Before television, there was radio, and they had all these serials, Superman and Calling All Cars, and I loved to listen to the radio. And then after the war, we had, a television set, and that was a big, marvelous thing in those days. I was an average student. I'd make mostly B's and C's and some A's. And I used to go to the library, also on Melrose Avenue, and I'd check out 14 books, and I'd read them all in 2 weeks, and then I'd bring them back and check out another 14 books. So the kind of books that were my favorite were detective stories. And even to this day, I'll read a detective story above most other novels. My best friend was Bob Thompson. He used to go over to his house and ride his bike, and then the big thrill of the year was when all the new cars came out, and on La Brea, there were multitudes of new car dealers. And so what we would do, we'd start up by Melrose and walk down to Wilshire, stopping at every single auto dealer and picking up the brochures, and then having a great time looking at them later. The big thrill was going to the Fairfax Theater and on Saturdays, and the admission was a dime, and for a dime you got a continuing serial that they showed a chapter each week, about 4 or 5 cartoons, about 8 coming attractions, and 2 full-length features, and then a drawing for a prize. So you went in about 1 and you came out about 6, and that was a lot of fun. We enjoyed that. My dad thought I should learn to play the mandolin. Why? It was a big instrument in Russia, and then he belonged to the ILGW union, which had a mandolin orchestra. So he stuck me in this orchestra of all adults, and I'm the only kid in there, and I'm playing the mandolin. Well, I think I probably wanted to be an actor, yeah, because in high school I took a drama class, and one day in the class, she said, anybody that would like to try out for a movie, go up to Sam Goldwyn Studios at Poinsettia and Santa Monica. So I went up there, and there were about 400 kids on a big sound stage, and these 4 guys came in and walked down the line. They said, y'all can go. And then they pointed at me, you stay. And I stayed and I read for them, and finally it was down to me and another man, and he got the part. His name was Farley Granger. The picture was the North Star with Ann Baxter and somebody else. But that sort of got me the bug, and I tried to get into other productions. The Hollywood Women's Club had a play, and I got into that. And when I was going to City College, we used to have I organized a traveling show to try to sell war bonds and raise money for the war. And we used to do a show in different places. And at that time, we did one show in Pershing Square in downtown LA. Got a pretty good crowd. And I did a routine with Billy Barty, who was a midget. And he was a great basketball player, and we had a great time, and we sold us some bonds. Had a contract with the Army Air Force that I would be called when I was 18 years and 6 months. So that was in March of '45. And they called me up, and I was sent for basic training to Shepherd Army Air Force Base. But they didn't need any more aviation cadets because they had them coming out of their ears by then. And when I finally left Shepherd, I went to Scottsfield, Illinois to train for radio operator bomber, and never did anything like that. When I was discharged in Scottsfield, Illinois, instead of going home, I went to my uncle and aunt in Brooklyn and stayed with them. It was 1945, and I went down on Broadway, and I went in a theater or two, and I said, do you have any parts? And they said, well, let's hear you read. And they offered me a part. And so when I went back to my uncle and aunt and told them I was offered a part in a play, they said, wait a minute, go back home, finish college, then come back and try out for. And so I listened to them, and naturally I never got back to try out for anything.